In today's episode, we're looking at 5 of the dumbest animal attacks ever recorded. From an elephant throwing a full-blown tantrum to a woman who walked into a bear enclosure carrying lasagna. But first, we begin with a selfie gone wrong with an injured bear. It was on May 2, 2018 in the remote countryside of the Nabarangpur district in Odisha, eastern India. The rural landscape stretched endlessly under the setting sun, with dusty roads winding through scattered villages and dense patches of forest. This was tiger country, a region where ancient trees lined the roadways, their canopies homed to countless species, while the undergrowth provided shelter for everything from small mammals to some of India's most formidable predators. The boundaries between human settlements and wild habitats blurred here, creating an environment where dangerous encounters were always a possibility. Prabhu Bhattara was a local taxi driver who had spent years navigating these rural roads. He was known for his friendly demeanor and his fascination with wildlife photography, often sharing photos on social media of the various animals he encountered during his travels. His phone was always within reach, ready to capture whatever unusual sight might present itself. On this particular evening, Prabhu was driving a group of wedding guests home after a long day of celebration. The passengers, dressed in their finest traditional attire, had entrusted him with the long journey back to their village. The day had begun like any other wedding celebration in rural India, with elaborate preparations, traditional ceremonies, and a feast that brought together families from across the region. The guests had spent hours dancing, eating, and celebrating before making arrangements for their journey home through the remote countryside. The sloth bear is one of India's most dangerous predators, despite being smaller than its North American cousins. Standing just 2 to 3 feet at the shoulder, these bears typically weigh between 120 and 310 pounds and are deceptively powerful. With long curved claws that can reach up to 3 inches in length and prominent canine teeth designed for both foraging and defense. Native to the Indian subcontinent, sloth bears are known for their aggressive temperament. As Prabhu's vehicle rounded a bend in the road, he spotted movement in the tree line. A large, dark shape was moving among the trees, limping noticeably and moving erratically. He immediately stopped the vehicle. When the creature moved into the open, it became clear what they were looking at: an injured sloth bear. The passengers immediately began urging Prabhu to drive on, recognizing the danger, but Prabhu was already reaching for his phone and stepping out onto the road. He approached the bear with his phone raised, moving to within just a few yards of the animal. He raised his phone and prepared to take the selfie, but as he positioned himself for the shot, his foot slipped on a patch of mud near the roadside. The sudden movement triggered the bear's attack response. With its escape route limited by its injury, the animal launched itself at Prabhu, its powerful claws extended and jaws open wide. The bear struck Prabhu with significant force, knocking him to the ground. Its claws sliced through his clothing and into his flesh as he fell onto the dusty earth. The bear released his arm and clamped down on his shoulder area, its teeth penetrating deep into muscle tissue. The animal continued its assault, moving to attack his neck and upper chest area. A stray dog appeared and began barking at the bear, even attempting to bite it, but the predator remained focused on its attack. One woman from the wedding party threw a stick at the bear, but the animal continued its assault. The bear's attack focused on Prabhu's neck and throat area, causing severe trauma to vital structures. His movements became increasingly weak as blood loss and injuries took effect. The bear continued its attack for several minutes, until Prabhu's body became motionless. When police and forest officials arrived, the scene was chilling. Prabhu Bhattara's body bore the marks of the savage assault, deep gashes to his neck, chest, and arms. He had bled out from the horrific injuries. Animal control officers tracked and tranquilized the injured bear, transporting it to a sanctuary for treatment. The incident prompted renewed warnings from local authorities about maintaining safe distances from wild animals. Prabhu's tragic death was a sobering reminder that wild animals are never to be underestimated. But just when you think you've heard it all, our next tale takes us to 2014, where an Asian elephant proved that in the wild, size and power matter. It was September 23, 2014 in Yellowstone National Park, a vast wilderness stretching across Wyoming, Montana, and Idaho, where the wild still decides the rules. Rolling meadows stretch toward distant mountains, painted with late summer gold. Steam hissed from geysers and hot springs, drifting into the crisp afternoon air. Dense pine forests stood like sentinels, their needles whispering in the breeze. Elk bugled in the distance, and the occasional shadow of an eagle swept across the open fields. It was peak tourist season. Cars crawled along scenic drives, families craned their necks from boardwalks, and camera shutters clicked every few seconds. Most visitors were looking for the same thing, a close encounter with Yellowstone's most famous resident, the American bison. Richard Park, a 23-year-old electrician from Billings, Montana, was in the park for work, repairing wiring at a ranger outpost. Friends knew him as adventurous, upbeat, and never without his phone, always eager to capture something worth sharing. That afternoon, while packing up tools, he overheard other visitors talking excitedly about a massive bull bison grazing in a nearby meadow. Bison are deceptively dangerous. Adult males can weigh up to 2,000 pounds, stand 6 feet tall at the shoulder, and can charge at speeds of 35 miles per hour. Despite their bulky frames and calm demeanor, they are unpredictable, especially during rutting season, when hormones make bulls more aggressive. Rangers warn visitors to keep at least 25 yards away. Many ignore the signs. Intrigued, Richard convinced two co-workers to join him for a quick look before heading back. They followed a narrow dirt trail toward the meadow, the air carrying the scent of pine and sage. Sunlight flickered through the leaves, and the quiet was broken only by the crunch of gravel underfoot. Warning signs lined the trail, bold red letters warning visitors to stay at least 25 yards away from bison. Richard barely glanced at them. His phone was already up, the lens focused on the bull. His co-workers stopped at the edge of the posted boundary, their voices urgent as they called for him to back off. The tone in their voices carried more than caution. It was the kind of nervousness that comes from knowing how fast a bad decision can turn deadly. Richard only waved them off, eyes fixed on the massive animal in the meadow. Each step brought him closer, boots pressing into the damp grass. The faint scent of earth and wild sage mixed with the distant hiss of wind through the aspens. The bison lifted its head, its dark, glassy eyes locked on him like twin black mirrors. Nostrils flared wide, steam puffing into the cool air. Then came the sound. A low, guttural snort, deep and vibrating like something pulled from the earth itself. The change was instant. One heartbeat, the bull was still. The next, it lunged. Muscle rippled beneath a shaggy brown coat as it exploded into motion, hooves tearing into the ground with a force that made the earth shudder. The pounding rhythm echoed like war drums through the meadow, each strike closing the distance at terrifying speed. 25 feet was gone in less than 2 seconds. Richard froze, just long enough for instinct to kick in. He turned to run, but he never made it more than a few steps. The bison's massive head smashed into his side with a bone-cracking thud. The sheer force lifted him off the ground, his body twisting violently in midair before slamming down into the grass. Pain lanced through his ribs, followed by a sharp pop as bone gave way. A strangled gasp burst from his lungs, the air ripped out of him. Before he could recover, the bull was already on top of him, curved horns hooked under his rib cage, driving upward with horrifying strength. Richard felt himself lifted again, weightless for a moment, before he was thrown several feet like a rag doll. He hit the earth hard, agony blooming in his chest and back. The world spun. The bull charged again, hooves struck with devastating accuracy, one crushing into his ribcage, another slamming into his abdomen. The impact ruptured organs, the weight nearly a ton pressing down until his chest caved. Blood bubbled at his lips as each stomp compounded the damage, his body buckling under the relentless assault. His co-workers screamed from the trail's edge, helpless against the raw power before them. The bull lowered its head and shoved him across the ground, rolling him onto his side before trampling him again. The sound of heavy hooves meeting flesh and bone was sickening, each impact leaving him weaker, slower. Richard's arms twitched, then still. His breath came shallow, ragged, before stopping altogether. The bull stood over him for a moment, sides heaving, then turned away. Its tail flicked lazily as it walked back toward the aspen grove, resuming its grazing as if nothing had happened. The meadow was silent except for the distant rustle of grass. Rangers arrived within minutes of the call, but there was nothing they could do. Richard Park was pronounced dead at the scene. The bull, identified as B211, had been involved in prior incidents with visitors who ignored safety distances, but as a protected animal, it remained under observation. News of his death spread quietly through his hometown. Friends described him as someone who could turn any ordinary day into an adventure. His family, stunned, struggled to comprehend how a few steps too close could lead to such violence. Neighbors spoke in hushed tones about the attack, sharing memories of his easy smile, his curiosity, and his love for the outdoors. It was the brutal truth of how quickly wildlife can turn deadly. In sunny Florida, that truth would be proven again when a moment of overconfidence by the gator pit erupted into chaos and blood. It was August 14, 2010, in the heavy, humid air of Orlando, Florida. Just a short drive from the theme parks was Gatorland, a 110-acre attraction known as the alligator capital of the world. The park was built around sprawling ponds and marshland, with raised boardwalks and wooden viewing platforms giving visitors a close but safe look at hundreds of American alligators. The afternoon sun beat down mercilessly on the wooden walkways, creating a sweltering atmosphere that made the air shimmer above the dark water. Cypress trees draped with Spanish moss provided patches of shade, while the constant chorus of insects and occasional splash from the water below reminded visitors they were in genuine Florida wilderness. Safety railings lined every viewing area, with multiple warning signs posted in English and Spanish about maintaining distance from the water's edge. Mark Bennett, a 34-year-old tourist from Savannah, Georgia, had arrived at Gatorland that morning with 3 college friends. Bennett worked as a marketing coordinator but had built a modest social media following through increasingly risky content. His Instagram featured him hanging off building ledges, swimming in restricted areas, and posing dangerously close to wildlife during previous trips. Bennett had specifically chosen Gatorland because he wanted footage that would outdo his previous posts. He'd researched the park's Jumperoo show, where alligators leap from the water to snatch whole chickens suspended from above their enclosures. The show took place on a platform extending over a large pond containing 6 adult alligators, each measuring between 8 and 11 feet in length. The morning had started routinely. Bennett and his friends purchased tickets, grabbed breakfast at the park's cafe, and began their tour. Bennett immediately started filming, capturing regular tourist shots while scouting for his planned stunt. He'd noticed during the 11 a.m. Jumperoo show that the feeding platform had a lower section where staff members stood to dangle the chickens. The area was clearly marked as off-limits to visitors, separated by a waist-high chain barrier and multiple warning signs. The American alligator is a heavyweight ambush predator native to the southeastern United States, especially Florida and Louisiana. Adult males can reach 14 feet in length and weigh over 1,000 pounds. Their bite force measures approximately 3,000 pounds per square inch, enough to crush a bowling ball. These apex predators are perfectly adapted for explosive bursts of speed both in water and on land, capable of launching their entire body length out of the water when striking prey. During the afternoon jumperoo show, Bennett made his fatal decision. While the crowd watched the scheduled demonstration from the safe viewing area, Bennett ducked under the chain barrier and stepped onto the restricted feeding platform. His phone was already recording as he positioned himself at the platform's edge, directly above the water where the largest alligator, an 11-foot male nicknamed Brutus, was floating expectantly. Bennett extended his phone over the water for a close-up shot, leaning forward past the platform's edge. Brutus, conditioned to associate the platform with feeding time, immediately fixated on the movement above. The alligator's tail began the characteristic side-to-side motion that precedes a strike. Without warning, Brutus exploded from the water with devastating force. His massive jaws clamped down on Bennett's extended right arm just below the elbow. The impact was so violent that Bennett's phone flew into the water as he was yanked forward. The alligator's teeth, designed to grip and hold rather than slice, punctured through muscle and bone, creating multiple compound fractures. Brutus immediately began the death roll, a hunting technique where alligators spin rapidly to disorient prey and tear away chunks of flesh. Bennett was pulled completely off the platform and into the murky water. The spinning motion separated his forearm from his body within seconds, sending arterial blood spraying across the platform and into the pond. Bennett surfaced briefly, his severed arm creating a massive blood trail before Brutus struck again. This time, the alligator's jaws closed around Bennett's torso, crushing ribs and puncturing both lungs. The death roll resumed, and Bennett disappeared beneath the surface. The entire attack lasted less than 90 seconds. Park staff immediately evacuated the area and contacted emergency services, but Bennett's body wasn't recovered until the following morning after wildlife officials removed Brutus from the enclosure. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission launched an investigation into the incident, ultimately ruling it an accidental death caused by visitor negligence. Bennett's family mourned in private, accepting with heavy hearts that a single mistake had cost him his life. The incident sparked renewed discussions about social media culture and the lengths people will go to for viral content. But while this encounter played out under the sweltering Florida sun, danger was also lurking hundreds of miles to the north, this time deep in the wooded trails of New Jersey. There, a group of friends out for a casual hike would come face to face with a predator that could run them down, climb after them, and tear them apart in seconds. It was September 21st, 2014 at the Opshawa Preserve in West Milford, New Jersey. The 576-acre nature preserve was a popular hiking destination located approximately 45 miles northwest of New York City. Dense forests of oak, maple, and pine trees covered rolling hills, with well-marked trails winding through the wilderness. The preserve was known for its diverse wildlife population, including deer, foxes, and occasional black bears that wandered through from the surrounding highlands region. Multiple warning signs were posted at trail entrances advising visitors about potential wildlife encounters and proper safety rules. The area had experienced increased bear activity in recent months, with several sightings reported by hikers and local residents. Park officials regularly reminded visitors to maintain safe distances from all wildlife and to never approach or feed wild animals. Stephen Logan was a 24-year-old Rutgers University student studying engineering. He was an avid hiker and outdoor enthusiast who frequently explored New Jersey State's parks and nature preserves with his friends. Stephen was known for his adventurous spirit and his habit of documenting his hiking experiences through photography, often sharing images of scenic views and wildlife encounters on social media. On this particular day, he'd organized a hiking trip with 4 college friends, planning to spend the afternoon exploring the trails at Opshawa Preserve. The group had chosen this location specifically for its reputation as excellent hiking terrain and its proximity to their university campus. The day had begun with the 5 friends meeting at the preserve entrance around noon, equipped with water bottles, snacks, and cameras for what they expected to be a routine hiking adventure. As they prepared to enter the trail system, they encountered a man and a woman who were leaving the preserve. The departing hikers warned them that they had spotted a black bear on the trails and strongly advised the group to turn around and choose a different location for their hike. The couple emphasized that the bear appeared agitated and recommended avoiding the area entirely. The American black bear is North America's most common bear species, with adults typically weighing between 200 and 600 pounds, though some males can exceed 800 pounds. Despite their name, black bears can range in color from black to brown, cinnamon, or even blonde. These powerful omnivores possess incredible strength, capable of running up to 30 miles per hour and climbing trees with remarkable agility. Their claws can grow up to 4 inches long and are designed for digging, climbing, and defense. New Jersey has one of the highest black bear densities in the nation, with approximately 3,000 bears residing throughout the state. Despite the clear warnings from the departing hikers, Steve and his friends decided to proceed with their planned hike. They entered the trail system and had been walking for approximately 30 minutes when they spotted a large black bear in a clearing ahead. The animal, later determined to weigh approximately 300 pounds, was standing beside a fallen log roughly 100 feet away from the group. Rather than immediately retreating, Stephen became excited about the rare opportunity to photograph a wild bear and began taking pictures with his smartphone. The bear initially appeared calm, occasionally looking in their direction but continuing to move around near the fallen tree. Stephen took 5 photographs of the animal from what he believed was a safe distance. However, after taking the photos, the group attempted to walk away from the area, but the bear began following them. As they continued along the trail, the bear's behavior became increasingly concerning. The animal closed the distance between itself and the hikers, approaching to within approximately 15 feet of the group. At this point, panic set in among the friends, and they made the critical decision to split up and run in different directions. The bear immediately pursued Stephen, who had begun climbing a rock formation in an attempt to escape. The bear reached him as he was partway up the rock face. The animal grabbed him with his powerful jaws, clamping down on his back and shoulder area, pulling him down from the rocks. The initial bite caused severe trauma to his upper torso, with the bear's teeth creating deep puncture wounds. The bear then dragged Stephen across the ground, maintaining its grip on his shoulder and back area. This action caused additional tissue damage and bleeding as the animal's teeth remained embedded in his flesh. The bear released its initial grip and attacked again, this time focusing on Stephen's neck. The animal's jaws clamped down with significant force, causing severe damage to blood vessels and soft tissue in the neck region. The bear used its claws to create lacerations across Stephen's chest and arms as it continued its attack. The savagery continued for several minutes, with the bear alternating between biting and clawing. The combination of bite wounds, claw marks, and the physical trauma from being dragged and pressed against the ground caused severe blood loss. The bear's final assault focused on Stephen's neck and head area, causing critical damage to vital structures. The severe trauma to his neck, combined with significant blood loss from multiple wounds, proved fatal. Stephen's body became motionless as the cumulative effects of the attack overwhelmed his ability to survive. The bear remained in the immediate area, exhibiting protective behavior over what it now considered its territory. When police and wildlife officials arrived at the scene after a 2-hour search, Stephen Logan was found dead with the bear still nearby. He had suffered severe trauma to his neck, back, chest, and arms, with significant blood loss from multiple bite and claw wounds. Officers shot and killed the bear at the scene. A necropsy later revealed that the animal had consumed human tissue. Stephen's tragic death marked a grim chapter in New Jersey's history, a reminder that black bears can turn deadly without warning. But over 2,000 miles away in the forests of Arizona, another encounter with the same species would prove just as brutal, this time unfolding not on a hiking trail, but in a woman's own backyard. It was October 25, 2017, just outside Flagstaff, Arizona. The remote wooded property stretched across several acres of pine and juniper forest, dotted with makeshift animal enclosures and rescue facilities. Marlene Brickshaw's self-proclaimed Little Ark was cluttered with bird feeders, rescue dog kennels, and a 40 by 60 foot chain link pen that housed 2 massive black bears. The property was located far from neighbors, surrounded by dense wilderness that provided natural camouflage for what had become an increasingly dangerous amateur wildlife operation. The bear enclosure was a simple chain-link fence with no roof, no backup barriers, and no safety protocols. Just a single gate that opened directly into the habitat. Marlene Brickshaw was a 58-year-old retired librarian who had spent the past 3 years operating an unlicensed wildlife rescue from her rural property. She was known throughout the county as the eccentric woman who collected stray animals and believed deeply that love and good intentions could overcome any danger. 3 years earlier, she had convinced authorities to let her take in 2 orphan black bear cubs after wildfires left them without their mother, claiming she had proper rehabilitation experience and facilities. Her neighbors knew her as someone who fed wild deer from her back porch and treated all animals as if they were domestic pets. The day had begun routinely for Marlene, with her usual rounds of feeding and caring for the animals on her property. She was running nearly 2 hours late for the bears' afternoon feeding, delayed by a lengthy phone call from her sister in California. The bears, Bruno and Baxter, had grown increasingly restless in their enclosure, pacing near the gate and showing signs of food-related agitation. Marlene loaded a tray with leftover lasagna rolls and fruit from her kitchen, then headed toward the pen carrying the food in both hands. She wore no protective gear, no gloves, and no safety equipment of any kind. Black bears may lack the size and aggression of their grizzly relatives, but they're opportunistic feeders with remarkable problem-solving skills. Their keen sense of smell can detect food from over a mile away, and once they associate humans with an easy meal, they may return repeatedly, becoming bolder and more unpredictable with each encounter. As Marlene approached the enclosure gate, Bruno, the larger of the 2 bears, weighing approximately 300 pounds, was already pacing near the entrance. His body language showed clear signs of agitation, tense movements, a fixated stare on the food, and flattened ears. Baxter, the smaller bear, remained in the far corner of the enclosure, showing submissive behavior toward his more dominant companion. As she entered the gate, she whistled her usual greeting to the animals. She had no way to defend herself and no backup plan if the situation turned dangerous. Bruno immediately focused on the food tray as Marlene stepped inside the enclosure. The bear moved directly toward her with purposeful strides, his attention completely fixed on the meal she was carrying. As she attempted to set the tray down in the usual feeding spot, Bruno approached aggressively, likely viewing her as competition for the food. The bear struck Marlene with significant force, knocking her backward onto the ground. The food tray fell from her hands, lasagna and fruit scattering across the dirt as she hit the earth. Bruno immediately positioned himself over her, preventing any attempt to escape toward the gate. The bear's jaws clamped down on Marlene's shoulder and neck area, his teeth creating deep puncture wounds in the soft tissue. The bite caused severe trauma to blood vessels and muscle in her upper torso and neck area. Bruno then began pulling her across the enclosure, maintaining his grip while dragging her away from the scattered food. This action caused additional tissue damage as his teeth remained embedded in her flesh, while the dragging motion created further lacerations. The bear released its initial hold and attacked again, this time focusing on her arms and torso. His claws created deep cuts across her chest and shoulders, penetrating through her clothing and into the underlying tissue. Each strike contributed to the blood loss and tissue damage. Blood loss from multiple wounds combined with the damage to her neck and respiratory system caused Marlene's strength to fade quickly. Her movements became increasingly weak as the bear maintained his aggressive behavior. The attack continued for several minutes, with Bruno alternating between biting and using his claws. The bear's behavior suggested food-related aggression rather than predatory hunting, but the result was equally devastating. Marlene's body eventually became still as the cumulative effects of blood loss and trauma proved fatal. The bear remained in the enclosure, continuing to exhibit territorial behavior around the body. 2 hours later, deputies found Marlene dead from massive injuries. Bruno was euthanized on site following standard protocol, while Baxter was tranquilized and transferred to a legitimate wildlife sanctuary in Colorado. The investigation revealed numerous safety violations in her amateur wildlife operation, with Arizona Game and Fish Department officials emphasizing the extreme dangers of keeping wild animals without proper training, facilities, or safety protocols. Marlene's death stood as a grim warning about the dangers of keeping wild predators in captivity without proper safeguards, a mistake that cost both her life and Bruno's. Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed this video, you're gonna love the one waiting for you on your end screen. Go check it out, and I'll see you there.